Many women who embark on a profound journey of self-discovery encounter a frustrating paradox. The more they heal and expand their consciousness, the more they seem to attract partners who are on the opposite end of the emotional spectrum. For Carl Jung, this is not a mistake of fate, but a fundamental psychic law of compensation, where intense light inevitably casts a dense and visible shadow. The emotionally immature man, often trapped in narcissistic patterns, is drawn to your luminosity like a moth to a flame, not because he wants to evolve, but because he seeks warmth without having to generate his own energy. He perceives, almost instinctively, that you possess a surplus of life, empathy, and inner structure that he desperately covets to fill the chronic void he carries within himself. Your stability becomes a beacon for those lost in the chaos of their own unprocessed emotions, creating an initial magnetic attraction that can easily be mistaken for a soul connection or destiny. The awakened woman vibrates at a frequency of authenticity and truth, making her a shining trophy for the fragile ego of a person with narcissistic personality traits. He sees you not only as a partner, but as a valuable object that can validate his existence before the world, functioning as a high-definition mirror, reflecting an enhanced image of himself. However, the problem lies in the fact that he lacks the psychic structure to sustain this light. He wants to possess it, but cannot integrate it or reciprocate it genuinely. Jung would explain this as the meeting of opposing archetypes, where your fullness highlights his fragmentation, generating a cycle of idealization followed by envy and attempts at control. It is vital to understand that this attraction does not diminish your value, but signals the power of your presence, which now needs stronger gates to filter who enters. You might wonder why, after so much inner work, the universe seems to send you such exhausting tests in the form of relationships with people disconnected from themselves. In Jungian thought, the unconscious always seeks wholeness, and these encounters often reveal where we still have porous boundaries or a hidden desire to save the other person in order to feel useful. The awakened woman often carries the archetype of the great mother or the healer, and the narcissist, operating as the eternal child, puer aeternus, unconsciously seeks this infinite embrace. Recognizing this dynamic is the first step to stop nurturing those who lack the capacity to grow and begin directing this vital energy toward your own expansion. The feeling of familiarity that arises in these encounters is deceptive. It doesn't stem from a compatibility of souls, but from the recognition of complementary wounds that seek resolution through repetition. The immature man knows how to identify your willingness to understand and forgive, using these virtues against you to stretch the limits of what is acceptable within the relationship. He tests your goodness because deep down, he doesn't believe that anyone can be genuinely honest, projecting his own distrust and malice onto your pure intentions. Understanding this removes the guilt from your shoulders. You didn't attract this because you are broken, but because your light is visible even to those who live in darkness. The cure for this attraction pattern doesn't require you to dim your light or become a cold and distant person to protect yourself from the world. On the contrary, it requires you to increase the intensity of your brilliance to the point where the truth becomes unbearable for those who live on lies and social masks. When you fully occupy your space and assert your non-negotiable values, the narcissist loses interest because they realize there are no loopholes for manipulation. Your conscience is the antidote, transforming what was once an invitation to abuse into an insurmountable protective barrier. One of the deepest reasons why conscious women attract immature partners lies in the savior archetype that often still operates in the female unconscious. You see the potential for healing and transformation in the other person, often ignoring the reality of who they are in the present moment, believing that your love will be the key to change. The narcissist, skilled at mimicking vulnerability, presents themselves as an misunderstood soul or a victim of circumstances, instantly activating your instinct for care and protection. They tell sad stories about difficult pasts, not to seek real healing, but to ensure that you lower your guard and offer your emotional resources without demanding reciprocity. I invite you to subscribe to the channel and become part of this community. Our community is focused on empowering women like you, teaching you how to use your empathy as a selective superpower, not as an open door to exploitation. By joining, you gain access to tools that will allow you to maintain your kindness without sacrificing your dignity and inner peace. A woman's awakened empathy is vast and profound, capable of feeling another's pain as if it were her own, which is a gift, but also a risk if there are no clear boundaries. For Jung, empathy without discrimination can lead to a dangerous psychic fusion, where you lose track of where your responsibility ends and the other's begins. The emotionally immature man does not possess developed empathy. He feigns emotions to get what he wants, creating an unbalanced dance where you give everything and he only receives. He feeds on your compassion, using it as fuel to sustain his own ego, without ever intending to reciprocate or evolve emotionally. The trap closes when you start justifying his toxic behaviors based on the traumas he reported, rationalizing the disrespect as a symptom of pain. This intellectualization of others' suffering is a common characteristic in very intelligent and aware women who use their wisdom to explain the inexplicable. However, understanding the origin of the narcissist's behavior should not be a passport to allow him to continue hurting you repeatedly. True wisdom lies in recognizing that although everyone has traumas, it is the responsibility of each adult to seek their own healing and reparation. Breaking with the savior archetype requires radical honesty with yourself, to admit that you cannot save someone who doesn't want to be saved, nor fix what doesn't want to be fixed. The narcissist isn't seeking healing. They are seeking external emotional regulation because they can't cope with their own internal anxiety and shame. By trying to save them, you are actually preventing them from facing the consequences necessary for their own growth, if they are even capable of it. Your highest mission is to save yourself, redirecting all that love and care towards your own inner child. Awakened women generally possess a well-developed and integrated animus, the masculine aspect of the female psyche, according to Jung, which gives them strength, assertiveness, and independence. This inner strength is extremely attractive to weak or immature men who unconsciously seek to absorb this power to compensate for their own lack of healthy masculinity. The narcissist envies her ability to achieve and her autonomy, desiring to conquer this strength, not to admire her, but to subjugate her and feel powerful. It is a veiled power game, where he tries to dominate the strong woman to prove to himself that he is superior, temporarily relieving his chronic insecurity. Initially, he may praise your independence and intelligence, placing you on a pedestal, but this is merely a strategy to create a bond of emotional dependence. Once the connection is established, he subtly begins to attack the very qualities he claimed to admire, attempting to undermine your self-confidence. He does this because your strength is a constant reminder of his weakness, and to level the relationship, he needs to make you feel small and doubtful. Jung would say he is projecting his own incompetence onto you, trying to transfer the feeling of inadequacy that haunts him. A woman who is awakened, accustomed to challenges and growth, may interpret this dynamic as something that needs to be worked on or resolved through dialogue and joint effort. However, with a narcissistic personality, there is no possible resolution, as his goal is not harmony, but the maintenance of control and hierarchy. He needs to be on top to avoid feeling the abyss of shame that exists below, and his natural strength threatens this fragile position. You find yourself in a constant battle to prove your worth or to maintain your identity, which is exhausting and drains the energy that should be used for your life's purposes. It's common that in this process you begin to doubt your own sanity or perception, as the manipulation is done gradually and insidiously, known as gaslighting. He distorts reality to make you believe that your strength is aggression, that your clarity is madness, and that your limits are selfishness. His negative animus tries to crush your spirit, but the awakened woman has the advantage of awareness. She can observe the game. Upon realizing that the dispute is a projection of his insecurity, you can choose to leave the board and stop playing. Your strength is not a flaw that needs to be diminished to fit into the small world of an insecure man. It is your greatest asset and protection. The right partner, one who is also on a path of awareness and maturity, will not feel intimidated by your light, but inspired by it. Until then, your task is to protect your animus, using your assertiveness to establish firm barriers against anyone who tries to diminish who you are. True feminine power makes no apologies for existing. In depth psychology, the emotionally immature man often remains trapped in the child archetype, eternally seeking a maternal figure who will nurture him without demanding anything in return. When he finds an awakened woman who is welcoming and nurturing, he projects onto her the image of the good mother, idealizing her as the source of all comfort. However, as soon as you set a boundary or say no, the projection instantly shifts to the terrible mother, the one who denies, punishes, and abandons. This oscillation between love and hate is not about you, but about his unresolved relationship with the primary maternal figure and his own inability to self-regulate. The narcissist reacts to boundaries with tantrums, punitive silence, or explosive anger, behaviors typical of a child whose desires weren't immediately met. For the awakened woman, this is disconcerting as she is trying to relate as an adult, while he is trapped in a childish dynamic of dependence and rebellion. He demands unconditional love, something only a mother gives to a baby, in an adult relationship that should be based on reciprocity and mutual respect. This unrealistic expectation is the root of much of the conflict and frustration you feel when trying to engage in dialogue with logic and reason. He sees your independence as personal abandonment, interpreting any time you dedicate to yourself as betrayal or lack of care for him. This deep need is a bottomless pit that no amount of love or attention can fill, as it is a structural void in his psyche. You find yourself exhausted, trying to fill this hole, without realizing that you are only feeding the pathology of dependency. Jung warns us that we cannot grow through another. Each individual must face their own dragons to mature. When you understand that you're dealing with a childish psyche in an adult body, the need to take offenses personally diminishes drastically. His attacks aren't real criticisms of your worth, but cries of frustration from a child who doesn't know how to handle the word no. However, this doesn't mean you should tolerate or maternalize this behavior. On the contrary, it's a sign to withdraw from that role. An awakened woman deserves a partner, not an emotional rehabilitation project. Recognizing this dynamic allows you to step out of the role of symbolic mother and reclaim your place as a sovereign and free woman. You are not responsible for his childhood wounds, nor do you have the magical power to heal them by sacrificing your own needs. Returning emotional responsibility to whom it belongs is the healthiest and most mature act you can perform. Your maternal energy should be preserved for your real children or your creative projects, not wasted on someone who refuses to grow up. Awakened women have an unwavering commitment to truth and authenticity, and this paradoxically attracts narcissists who live on lies and fabrications. They are fascinated by your ability to be real because deep down they know they are frauds, living out characters created to gain approval. The narcissist approaches you to try to absorb this authenticity by osmosis, believing that by being by your side, he too will seem more real and profound. However, your truth acts as a relentless mirror that over time begins to reflect his flaws and lies, which becomes unbearable for his inflated ego. In this moment of reflection, I would like to ask you, have you ever felt that your mere presence or your honest questions seem to deeply offend or irritate your partner for no apparent reason? Leave your answer in the comments, as this is a common experience among women who serve as true role models. Sharing your story helps validate the perception that your light is not an attack, but a revelation that disturbs those who live in the shadows. The conflict arises because the awakened woman cannot condone falsehood. She questions, she seeks depth, and she points out inconsistencies. For the narcissist, this is felt as a mortal threat, as he needs to maintain the illusion of perfection at all costs in order not to crumble. He begins to attack you precisely for being truthful, accusing you of being too critical, too sensitive, or too demanding. He tries to break the mirror, you, so he doesn't have to see the ugly reflection of his own actions and dubious character. Your search for deep conversations and real resolutions is frustrated by his superficiality and constant evasions, preferring to sweep everything under the rug. Jung would say he's running from his own shadow, while you're trying to illuminate it to promote healing and growth in the relationship. This difference in goals creates an insurmountable chasm. You want connection and truth. He wants control and appearances. Accepting that he doesn't have the capacity or the will to meet you at that depth is painful, but liberating. Your truth is your greatest shield and also your compass to escape this labyrinth of mental and emotional confusion. Do not diminish your perception or silence your voice to accommodate the comfort of those who live in lies. The awakened woman knows that the truth, however harsh it may be, is the only path to true freedom. Continue to be that mirror of integrity, but direct the reflection towards those who have the courage to look at themselves and transform. The attraction between an awakened woman and an emotionally immature man can be seen from a spiritual and psychological perspective as a final graduation test in self-love. The universe, or your own higher self, brings this challenge to verify if you have truly integrated the lessons about self-worth and boundaries that you learned in theory. It's easy to feel empowered when you're alone. The real test is maintaining that empowerment in the face of someone who actively tries to dismantle it. The narcissist is the spiritual personal trainer who, through resistance and pressure, forces you to strengthen your emotional muscles. Every time he tries to cross a line and you say no, you are solidifying your sovereignty and reaffirming your commitment to your dignity. This relationship is not a mistake of fate, but an intensive opportunity to put into practice everything you know about respect and worthiness. The suffering generated in this dynamic serves as a sharp warning that you are betraying yourself to try to maintain a connection that has already died or never truly existed. The complete awakening happens when the pain of betraying yourself becomes greater than the fear of losing the other person. Jung spoke of individuation as a process of separation from the collective and from projections in order to become a unique and whole individual. The narcissist tries to merge with you and annihilate you, and resisting this annihilation is the supreme act of individuation and strength. You learn that your love must first be for yourself, and that any relationship that demands the sacrifice of your essence is too costly. This test forges in you a resilience and clarity that no other experience could provide with such intensity. By going through this ordeal, you cease to be a good girl seeking approval and become a wise woman who approves of herself unconditionally. You realize that your capacity to love is a gift, but that access to this gift must be restricted and earned. The narcissist, with their inability to love, teaches you, by contrast, what true love is and what it definitely is not. This lesson, once learned firsthand, is never forgotten. The test ends when you choose yourself without hesitation, withdrawing your energy from the toxic game and turning back to your own life. At that moment, the pattern breaks, and you graduate to a new level of awareness and relationships. The attraction to that type of man disappears, because the lesson has been integrated and no longer needs to be repeated. Many awakened women, immersed in spiritual concepts, may fall into the trap of interpreting the intensity and pain of a narcissistic relationship as signs of a twin flame or karmic connection. The narcissist, with their initial mirroring ability, love bombing, creates a sense of familiarity and intensity that mimics a deep soul connection. However, Jung would warn us to differentiate a genuine spiritual connection from a pathological obsession based on unresolved traumas and projections. Intensity is not synonymous with intimacy, and constant pain is not proof of a higher or predestined love. The belief that this relationship has a divine purpose can keep you trapped for much longer, trying to evolve through suffering and sacrifice. It is vital to understand that healthy and spiritually elevated relationships bring peace, mutual growth, and security, not confusion, anxiety, and devaluation. The concept of twin flame is often distorted to justify abuse and emotional neglect, romanticizing what should be rejected. Your soul seeks expansion and joy, not the contraction and fear that the narcissist provokes daily. De-romanticizing pain is a crucial step toward complete awakening and liberation from the clutches of this spiritualized illusion. The immature man is not your spiritual master in disguise. He is merely a person with a character disorder who lacks the tools to love. You don't need to pay karma or suffer to prove your spiritual worth. You are already worthy of peaceful and respectful love here and now. True soul connection uplifts both partners, rather than draining the life from one to feed the other. By letting go of the spiritual mission narrative of saving or enduring your partner, you regain your power of choice and your rationality. You begin to see the facts as they are: abusive behaviors, lack of empathy, and manipulation without the golden filter of misapplied spirituality. This clarity is liberating and allows you to close the door on drama and open the window to mental health. Your spiritual journey continues, but now far from the toxicity that anchored it in pain. True sacred union happens first within you, in the integration of your own masculine and feminine energies, animus and anima. When you are whole inside, you stop searching for halves outside and stop attracting those who need completeness at your expense. The illusion dissolves, and the reality of your own fullness becomes the new standard for love. The path to awakening can be lonely, because as you raise your consciousness, many old superficial connections cease to make sense and dissolve. This temporary loneliness can create a specific vulnerability: the deep desire to be seen, understood, and found by someone who vibrates at the same level. The narcissist, an opportunistic predator, senses this loneliness and this need for deep connection, presenting himself as the answer to your prayers. He pretends to have the depth you seek, temporarily filling the social and emotional vacuum that awakening has created. However, this connection is a mirage, as he lacks the necessary substance to sustain the depth he promised at the beginning. The vulnerability of the awakened woman is not a weakness, but a state of openness that needs to be protected with keen discernment. Learning to be alone without feeling lonely is one of Jung's great lessons. Solitude is the moment of encounter with the self, not of abandonment. When you learn to fill your own solitude with creativity, purpose, and divine connection, you cease to be an easy target for those who offer false companionship. The fear of being alone often keeps her trapped in a relationship that makes her sick, accepting crumbs just to have someone by her side. Awakening requires the courage to prefer her own worthy company to an unworthy one that drains her vitality. You discover that solitude is fertile ground where your new life is being nurtured, far from the weeds of manipulation. It is in this sacred space that you strengthen your roots, so that, in the future, you can share your life with someone who truly deserves to be in your garden. Vulnerability should only be shared with those who have earned the right to enter your inner circle through trust and consistency over time. The narcissist forces rapid intimacy to skip the trust-building stages, and the awakened woman needs to be aware of this warning sign. Protecting your heart is not about closing yourself off to love, but ensuring that the love that enters is safe and true. Your soul is a temple, and not everyone should have access to the main altar. By embracing your solitude with love, you send a powerful message to the universe that you are complete and not desperate. This shift in vibration repels opportunists and begins to attract people who are also whole and at peace with themselves. Loneliness ceases to be a void to be filled and becomes a space of freedom and fulfillment. The crucial moment arrives when the awakened woman realizes that the only way to win this game is to stop playing and leave the board. Breaking the cycle with a narcissist is not just ending a relationship, it's a revolutionary act of self-rescue and affirmation of life. You stop trying to explain, trying to be understood, and trying to obtain a dignified closure from someone who has no dignity to offer. The reclaiming of power happens in silence, in detachment, and in the total withdrawal of your energy from the other person's field. This decision to break away is the beginning of your true freedom. Subscribe to the channel now to get the support you need during this transition and rebuilding phase. Here, we celebrate each step you take toward autonomy and offer a roadmap to navigate the post-breakup period with safety and mental clarity. Your registration is the seal of your commitment to a life free from abuse and full of meaning. By withdrawing your attention, which is the narcissist's lifeblood, you cause the toxic dynamic to collapse and force reality to set in. He may try everything to pull you back, promises, threats, defamation, but the awakened woman knows that these are merely the last gasps of a dying pattern. You stand firm, anchored in your truth and the certainty that you deserve far more than the mediocrity of control. Your power returns to your hands, and you use it to build a life that reflects who you truly are. Reconstruction is the process of taking the remaining pieces and creating a new mosaic, more beautiful and resilient than the original image. You discover talents, strengths, and dreams that were dormant under the shadow of the relationship, and now they have room to flourish. The breakup is, in fact, a big yes you say to your future, your health, and your joy. You lost nothing but illusions and chains. You gained the whole world and yourself back. The cycle ends not when he changes, but when you change your response and decide that your well-being is non-negotiable. The awakened woman who reclaims her power is a force of nature, unstoppable and luminous. The narcissist remains in the past, a lesson learned, while you move towards an infinite horizon of possibilities. After the storm comes integration, the process of assimilating everything that has been experienced and transforming pain into crystallized wisdom. You are no longer the same woman who entered the relationship. You are an updated version, stronger, wiser, and more aware of your own light and shadow. Jung would call this an expansion of consciousness, where the experience of evil served to awaken a deeper and more realistic understanding of life. You cease to be naive and become lucid, maintaining the kindness of your heart, but now protected by the sword of discernment. You are now attracting a new kind of reality because your vibration has changed and no longer resonates with the frequency of neediness or submission. Immature men may try to approach you, but they are quickly repelled by your barrier of self-respect and clarity. You are no longer an easy target. You are a fortress of light that only allows entry to those who come with peace and truth. The pattern has been broken at the root within you, and this changes everything that happens outside. Gratitude arises not from the abuse, but from the extraordinary woman you have become after the abuse, through your own strength to overcome. You recognize that the darkness served to show the magnitude of your light, and that now nothing can extinguish it. Your life gains a new purpose, to live authentically, to love wisely, and to inspire others with your journey of rebirth. You are integrated, whole, and finally at peace with yourself. The narcissist was merely an unwitting catalyst for your greatest spiritual and emotional awakening. Now, free from their shackles, you can soar to heights you never imagined possible. Awareness is the path, healing is the process, and freedom is the destination. You've arrived.